So what we're going to hit on, guys, is I think in this world of AI and learning experiences and complexity for learning technology, there's a big belief that we can create a much more personalized learning experience, and that leads to greater engagement, which leads to the business impact metrics we want to get to. So we're going to touch on a whole range of things, from content and how we make the content interesting and engaging, how we use AI in a special way and a great way towards it, and a whole ways, including moments of need, and how we utilize all the amazing technologies available today to allow us to be what we want to be. If we hit to the third bit, and slight apologies for the graphic coming out as it is, but in essence, what we're basically saying here is that every bit of data correlation that we see, there is a direct connection between perhaps a new metric to think about learning in the world of informal learning and AI, rather than just traditional, is there a connection between being trained and business impact? And generally speaking, that's using the same metric as social media companies use, like YouTube and Facebook and Twitter, which is, are people choosing to come back to the platform in a frequent model? So when we think about why is personalization important and why is engagement important, is because we see a direct correlation between the amount of times that people come back to a platform or a habit of learning. So what we see is the people that go back 2 or 3 times a week perform better in metrics such as retention of staff, acceleration of competency, and key KPIs that go towards it. So the old way to think about, I guess, learning is, has people have gone through a course of being trained, is there a connection, versus have the people that got a behavior and a modern habit to learn in all the different modalities of, and just a curious question before we jump in, when you guys think about learning outside of work, where do you go to? What have we got? You got a big YouTube, yep. What, TikTok, someone say TikTok? We got one of them, anything else? ChatGPT, most excellent. Most of you probably aren't, and I think it's interesting because each those 3 answers is a slightly different mode, right? So TikTok's 30-second short videos. YouTube tends to be slightly longer videos. ChatGPT is just give me the text to an answer. So we're all making individual choices based on our preferences and our biases that we have. Maybe we don't know. Maybe our neurodiversity, maybe our language, all those type of things that go with it. So again, before we get into the detail of like all the different great things we talk about, so when we think about why personalization and different modalities is important, is we're trying to give now breadth of choice for people to learn how they want to learn in the moment they want to learn with all the preferences they have, in order for them to become returning learners. So we know the people at this bottom bucket, they perform better at their job, they stay longer, they're more engaged, they're more retained than the people that don't. It's not rocket science, right? Because if it didn't, well, none of us should be at the conference its industry shouldn't exist. If this isn't true, we shouldn't exist as an industry. But as you say, you're going to YouTube, you go to ChatGPT, we're all learning every day, and we're all returning users of other learning platforms. So that's where ideally we want to get to, and that's why all the different ways of learning, we want to give choice to the individual to go learn. And when we think about personalization, right, so 4 or 5 buckets or 6 buckets we're going to touch on. So neurodiversity, just going to touch on that as a personal favorite. Language diversity, we know it's harder to learn in second language than first language. So that's a blocker we want to get rid of. The moment of need, so sometimes I just need to find the ChatGPT answer. Sometimes I want to watch a video. Sometimes I need to go on a learning journey. So there's different moments of need based on what I have. Generational learning preferences, those that are now used to 30-second videos, those that are used to 5-minute videos, those that want to get the answer in Google-style way. All these are individual preferences that we have, along with kind of technology, other stuff inside there. So maybe we'll touch on the first one, right, which is neurodiversity. So on average, I reckon about 15% of the workforce is neurodiverse. In frontline jobs, such as retail, it's probably closer to 30%. That's a pretty big portion of our learners that we probably haven't been considering. And let's be honest, most of us design learning in tune with the way that we want to learn. So as an example of that, so as an ADHD person, that my preference is to learn things concisely in multimedia, stuff that's going to keep my attention and be short in length. So YouTube videos and so forth is a great part, which is probably why outside of my commercial company, Fuse, I created a YouTube channel that has 1,000 videos that explains the secondary school education system in my preferred medium, which is bite-sized videos. We have 10 million kids using it, and that's great. But when I started the project, I started that project because I believed the world wanted to learn my way. Probably not true. Some of the world want to learn my way, but some of the world probably want to learn other ways as well. And that's maybe the reality of my journey I've now got to, and the understanding of that part. So If we think then again around how different neurodiversity aspects, and when we talk about neurodiversity, we're looking at it from all those parts, from ADHD to autism to dyslexia to those parts. So all of these are on the spectrum, and we recognize anything between 15% of being officially diagnosed up to 30% maybe inside there. If I think about me as a learner, as an ADHD learner versus friends of mine who are autistic and how they prefer to learn, it's kind of radically different. So as an ADHD person, we already hit the part that my preferences is to watch stuff, to listen to stuff, and to have probably multiple ways to maintain my attention. As an autistic, and therefore an autistic person, the person who runs a charity called Abilities, her preference is short, to the point, and wants to read it. Radically different perspective, right? So when we're designing of learning, to the question that came in earlier, how do we make sure we design learning that we're considering all those different audiences, which these are just two of the parts of the personalization part. If I think about menu systems, right, as my ADHD is probably going in there as a more visionary learner, I want to see everything that's available to me, and I will choose the priority and the sequence of learning based on what's most interesting, based on getting a dopamine hit. So my brain is all about naturally about getting a dopamine hit. So my preference is, give me the picture, I'll choose number 3 first, then number 7, number 2, number 1. Give me sequential learning and I'll go crazy. It's like going to the opera. I'll be crawling the windows, trying to find anywhere out of there. Put me in a classroom, I'll distract and disturb everyone. I'll drive the room crazy. I spend more time, as my kids do, outside the classroom than inside the classroom. Not unique, but that's it, right? Ideas coming in, and that sequential part, you must do this, must do that, really hard. Autistic person, I remember when I was a trainer and delivering training, I had an autistic person in the front, ADHD person in the back. ADHD person kept asking questions from page 74. Whenever I asked them, the autistic person's going, I don't understand why you'd answer that. Well, on page 4, chapter 7, the logical thing to do that next. As a trainer, how do I keep both audiences happy? As a face-to-face, that was particularly hard. But obviously in the e-learning world, we can create different interfaces, automatically with the click of a button, sequential for the people that want that logical, what comes next, that autistic brain, versus my visual brain and another way of doing it, which is I want to jump around based on what I find interesting. I want to watch stuff, listen to the stuff by preference. The best example I read a book called, I think it was Human Brain by Professor Winston. It's like a 500-page book with no pictures that explain how the brain works. Beautiful book. And from that book, I read 7 other books that goes from that. After reading like 500 pages of that book, at the end of the book, it says, and as I discussed in my 6-part BBC mini-series, there's a video. I've gone through 500 pages and taken 3 months, and you've got a 6-part mini-series. Obviously, if I had that opportunity at the beginning, I would have chosen that as my preference rather than I wanted to learn, so I went through the pain of the 500-page book, but not an ideal preference for me. Versus, again, the autistic part would have been happy, in a different way towards I was. So I think if we look now, and I think this is what makes it such an exciting moment and why my failure in that classroom to address both audiences is now directly possible out of the box because of this moment we have, what we call punctuated evolution. So, AI allows us to rethink the whole thing of everything we're doing, from the content creation to the modalities of learning to understand the learner. So every single aspect towards it is being turned upside down. So if we give a practical example, and my last company did lots of this, and I'm sorry if any of you went through some of those next courses and got bored senseless, especially if you had ADHD, which definitely would have driven you senseless. So the old world is pretty single modality, right? Because it's costly to create multi-modalities for all those different preferences. Cost is the barrier. Cost and time was the barrier towards doing that. In this new world, so, for example, in our platform, if we capture an expert talking, how to make a mojito, let's say one of our customers, which is a restaurant chain, if we capture that person explaining the perfect mojito, so for example, one of our customers, Levery Restaurants, in 2 days, we just captured the best expertise of every person and how they do their job. So what every CEO wants, ultimately, is consistency, right? So how do we get consistent excellence in every job, in sales and engineering customers? So we would go and record all those experts, but then the benefit of a platform today, such an AI-powered platform, is as soon as the video goes in, the people that want to watch it can watch it. AI automatically transcribes it so I can read it. Those that want to listen to it, while they're walking away can listen to the audio. That's automatic. Those that want to have a conversation, more social, can start saying, so what's the best line or what's the best of that? Others just say, look, I don't want to watch a video. I'm more of a problem-solving type learner. So when I'm stuck, I just want to know actually what step do I do next, or what's the best ROM to put in. And because all of the knowledge, and we'll talk about this a bit later on, all of the knowledge in the video goes into the AI engine, then anyone who wants to learn in that way, that ChatGPT style way, can have a conversation. Find an answer, follow-up answer, more detail. But from a modality side, it's just upload and it's automated between 5 modalities. Make sense so far? And the technology is kind of halfway there, as in the internet, not our technology. Oh, spoke too soon. Hi, great. If I take on the next step towards that, and although I'm a lover of bite-sized content and building logical core structures from that, and therefore you're able to make formal learning and informal learning simultaneously, I recognize there's also a time for a course. So again, given an example, so the other day we wanted to make a course for our sales team upon how do we get every salesperson in our company to ask questions in a consultative manner to every prospect we talk to. So we interview the expert. We can either record that in the platform or use a recording from Zoom or somewhere else, but take a recording of the video of a half-hour interview towards that. Then type in a prompt that says, from that video, create me a course, snip the long video into bite-sized chunks, and to translate it into French and Greek from me. So just a prompt for all that. So, and use that video that I've done, which I'm just uploading at the bottom or connecting to inside the platform. That then automatically creates the outline. So each page or section learning objective is created with a little prompt by each one. So I want to change the prompt for the mini prompts, if you like, for each page. I'm going to do that. All the images I could be sourced from the web or could be generated and so forth. I can specify where the sources come from. In a couple of weeks' time, I could even create little visualizations of each part. And so I've now got a storyboard. From that storyboard, I press another button, and I've now got the extraction of that with the text, the questions, all of that type of stuff towards that. I've got a button which allows me to then go from text to speech. So any videos, any text inside here, from a neurodiversity side, recognizing maybe dyslexic people don't want to read everything, right? They want to read all that stuff. So the ability to be neurodiverse and have a natural voice that's going to go text to speech automatically created as part of that course. Cool so far? There's good nods there. That was good. Any questions so far? Are we on the right lines? So the great question. So will the AI translate it? And yeah, you just stole my thunder on the next slide. But great. In the courseware stuff, absolutely. And I'll show you what it does outside of that stuff as well. Again, fingers crossed. I mean, I don't want to risk it. Then let's give it a go just in case the internet's okay. Is it going to allow me to load up? Oh, maybe it's catching up. So again, using that initial transcript, there were just 2 examples of here, and I really wanted to show this bit as well because it's so cool. There were 2 different examples. One was, and this is for some of you may already with technologies like Notebook LLM. Little show of hands, who's got that? Yep, so a few of that. So in essence, you could take that transcript from it, and it actually creates a podcast, like a Joe Rogan style podcast from that.
All right, so today we're doing a deep dive into digital learning and more specifically, how to make it work better for everyone, especially neurodivergent folks.
Yeah.
We always talk about making online learning more inclusive, and we've got some seriously insightful conversations for you today that should give you a good cheat sheet on how to get started.
Which is, again, it's just another media. It's a bit of fun, interesting to mix things up. The other version, which I'm hoping I can show, which we just created again in 30 seconds, was then an AI rap version of that with music and so forth towards it, which actually is pretty cool.
Yo, Cecil Cornwall, numbers don't lie. 9% learning, weekly staying high. That's the best thing ever, no cap, no try. Staff locked in, knowledge multiplies. Faster onboarding, no time to waste. Clocking in smooth, straight into place. Less time to competence, move at pace. Every new hire, running the race. Fuse got them locked in, levels going up. Stats so clean, yeah, numbers blowing up. Conversion rates, yeah, they growing up. AOV stacking, no slowing up.
I mean, I'm not saying you use that as a learning objective, but it's just really showing you how advanced the technology now is, that I can interview an expert, and within a couple of seconds, I've got, or let's say a minute, I've got interactive poll, which my kids use. I use this at school with my kids all the time, which is if I'm learning a subject, put all the homework in towards it, and then it creates a podcast, which is a review. We automatically have review questions using the chatbot that says, here it automatically creates the quizzes and so forth to get them towards that, which they love as a way to actually test their knowledge for a question. So it's really just showing how, I guess, advanced that technology is now being to allow us to create all those different modes to come from it. I'm not suggesting we all learn from the medium of rap, but you never know, right? Could be cool. So then before we get to the translation stuff, then let's talk about personalization and moment of need, right? Because obviously if you are, and we're talking to one of our clients today that is a car manufacturer, that when the roadside engineer gets stuck, right? When the roadside engineer gets stuck with my car, and I do some really stupid things in my car, right? I've got an electric car, and I often let the battery go out. And every time the battery goes out completely, then you've got to do some weird stuff to open the doors of it, right? You can't even move it. You can't get to it. The only way you can get to it is you've got to go to the old battery, 12-volt battery, which you can't open the bonnet for, somehow find a way into it, get that towards it, and it's non-standard. But every engineer that's done it, half a dozen of them, goes to YouTube when they get to the car in order to understand how to solve the problem. Which means that the manufacturer has got a learning problem because all that knowledge sits in their courses. But you ask the question is, well, how many of those roadside engineers actually go to a course when they don't know how to do it? Answer's none. It takes 13 clicks to get to the course, and then whatever then to browse through the course to get to the bit of knowledge. No one's going to do that, right? They ask a friend or via YouTube. So when we think of moment of need, which is a good framework, that's framework that says, well, how do we make it super easy? So we design learning once so it fits all moments of need. Moments of need being when I've got a problem like the roadside engineer, all the way through to I've got foundation learning because I'm actually becoming a car engineer for the first time. So there's new stuff, there's more stuff, and I'm stuck stuff, kind of stuff, right? So again, hitting that bar, so again, technology-wise, solve and apply bit is really search, right? It's search with a YouTube-style engine in it or a ChatGPT-style engine behind it. So a bit of that. Your stuff at the beginning, compliance, mandatory learning, we kind of know mostly how to do that with a bit more around kind of AI skills. And then there's how do we keep up to date? How do we create courses and learning plans that actually change how far you've gone through them as new knowledge is updated? So a few different bits towards that. So hitting the first bit, which is in essence performance support. So Charles Jennings was talking about this as the 70% bit. In essence, this is your performance support or your search bit. When I'm stuck, as you said, I go to YouTube, go to TikTok, go to Google, and that's the experience that we need. So in a platform like ours, we basically are a search engine at its heart and knowledge management engine at its heart. So we would connect into all the different sources and then create an integrated enterprise search experience on the learning platform. To connect to, if there's libraries like LinkedIn, you access those. If they've got knowledge shore to connect to those, and you have that YouTube style or Google style experience to find the resource. But if you ask a question, like Google, it recognizes when you want an asset versus when you want an answer. So if I want a video, I'm typing in, the battery car 742. If I want, how do I change it? As soon as I put in how do I, it's going to flick and actually not find the resource, but it's going to give you the step-by-step answer. And then it's going to give you the ability to ask follow-up questions towards that. But again, automated so that you don't have to set all that stuff up. That's quite radically different, right? Because when we think upon training, we think of it as training versus learning. When we're adding this type of technology in, it means we can now jump. This is what Charles Jennings gets really excited about. Charles Jennings has been on about 70-20-10 for a long time, but only a few companies already got there because the cost to do this was too much. Now that the cost of it is, it's automated, it happens dynamically in terms of it, the 70% resource-wise is automatic, which is an amazing opportunity. And while Charles Jennings is now semi-retired, I think he's just given up saying, you guys are not getting it. But the AI's come back and he's gone, yeah, I'm back again. So he's excited. And then obviously the idea is you go from asking the AI, asking a follow-up to the AI, but then sometimes the AI doesn't have the answer yet, but it knows who the experts are because it's found the content related to the experts. So then you're able to go, well, actually, let me click on this bit of content, which Matt or Sarah wrote, and I'm now into a conversation. I'm now into that LinkedIn, YouTube-style conversation where I'm chatting to the human expert towards it. So we're merging, this is, I think, where we're merging the expertise of humans, the expertise of AI, because most experts don't want to ask the same question every time. What they want to do is add value to the business. So this immortalizes their knowledge through time and space. But at the same time, for the 1% of questions, that's a new question, that's then get added to the conversational bit of a social learning platform. Cool so far? Anyone disagreeing or just going to throw rocks at me? I love a rock every now and then. So yeah, so from AI to conversations and then coming back to human conversations when relevant towards it. The second bit then is just a simple bit that says, the problem to some degree with the old SCORM course is when things change. Because if you, like that engineer, that car engineer, if a new process, a new part, a new bit that's happened, The problem with that particular piece is going to be you've got to do a new course. So this type of space then says, let me just add the new process, a new video, and then we're away and it's updated. So maybe onto languages. And I think this is a really funny clip, but it explains the translation issue that you mentioned really well, right? Which is he's talking, he's laughing at her accent, really like my wife does when I try and speak Italian, right? She's on the floor with all arms, it doesn't help, and that's what she's basically saying, right? She's saying, like, do you know how hard it is for me to talk and to learn and how smart I am in my native language? And obviously, from our perspective, we know that, right? So we know if we're trying to teach people in the non-native language, they have to work a lot harder cognitively to learn the subjects we want to do. They don't just have to learn the subject, they've got to use a lot of that cognitive power to go through that. Here, so now what we have is one button ability to not just translate text, but translate the audio and videos. So if you take that example of the company America, Spanish is a really popular second language, a very popular first language of that audience that's working in hospitality. So inside here, all those videos, the 100 videos we created, which is the consistent best practice of their knowledge, you're pressing one button, and then our person here is going from talking English to talking Spanish in a click of a button. Behind the scenes, what's happening is it's using best of class AI to transcribe from audio to text. Then it's doing text-to-text translation, and then it's doing text-to-speech in the cloned language of the original person. So when I'm doing it, it sounds like a London accent talking Hindi, which is kind of funky. Especially if you're doing it, right? 'Cause it is quite weird, because it sounds like I can actually speak that language, which if anyone meet my mother-in-law, don't tell them I can speak Italian now. That would be bad for our relationship. So then maybe the last bit, right? The last bit just in create that personalization is around that personalized learning paths. So how do we use it? If we've got this massive content, how do we help people on their journey of learning as we go through? So if we hit this final problem, right? So this one here where, how do we make it easy? So when we look at learning, we've got that learning moment of need, which is I'm stuck, I'm in the car, how do I serve the battery? So there's other need of learning, which is how do you help people on that next job or help on the career path they're doing, right? Two radically different needs and probably two radically different views of learning technology to get there. One is heavily AI search, heavily learning in the path. And this one here is looking at a different issue. It says, let's say in that same company, in the corporate HQ, you've got hundreds of roles, you've got loads of different skills, loads of different courses, and therefore, how do you dynamically match all those things together? You've got two big problems. If you're using third-party content as well as your own, there's no universal taxonomy to reference that content. What somebody will call leadership might be radically different from one library to the next. And automatically tag in your own stuff as well. The second thing is most of the technologies out there have to manually map the actual skills gap to the course, which is a massive headache. So again, if we look what we do now, and again, where AI helping us to personalize this experience and doing all the hard work for us, taking the admin away, what it does is it automatically retags an organization's content, what they use externally, what they use internally, to whatever their preferred taxonomy is, or you give them one. Second, then it then matches the content to that skills gap. So if I've got 5 skills gaps, such as active listening or talking too fast, then it's going to automatically know that, and it's going to match then any new content I have to that learning journey for me. So automating that whole learning path stuff inside of AI. And maybe the last part to it here is around the personalization of the experience. So again, we know different audiences have different outcomes ideally. It's really hard to think that a platform should have one experience for every program or every audience. A sales audience, it's going to have different to a leadership cohort program. So the ability to flexibly design the different experiences for each one and in a simple UI that people recognize. Just as a curiosity, did that UX on the left-hand side look a bit similar? Because it uses a common framework, right? So there's a framework out there which Google use, YouTube use, Netflix use, Spotify use, and we use the same one. So the benefit to that means your learners, if they can use YouTube or any of these type platforms, they're going to be able to use the learning platform. We don't have to train them to use the learning platform. And also to recognize, maybe I'll just jump to this part, right? Also to recognize back to that part that there are actually probably even generational preferences in terms of how I go to find content. So if you probably got a slightly older generation, they'll be using SharePoint for their whole lives. They probably want to be able to go through files and folders and browsing. That's the default. Probably have a younger generation, as an 80-20 rule, there's probably going to be search as their place to get to it. I expect to be able to search and find that part or a feed that's going to inform me and keep me up to date. So again, if we want to serve all our audiences, then we need to make sure that we're considering that. And both the UX has that naturally, but at the same time, the ability to customize different experiences for different audiences based on the outcome, that flexibility is there. So maybe just wrapping up and going back to what we talked about earlier on. So the relevancy of this topic, the relevancy of personalization, and the different ways to think about personalization from language, from moment of need, from all the other things we discussed, is because we want to increase engagement. If we give one type to one person, and as an ADHD person, I'm going to be outside the classroom, I don't want to be outside the learning platform. To bring me back in, it's got to be in my way. For an autistic person, inside their way. For a person that's French or German, how do you address those issues? For my problem in that moment versus the experience I go through. And the great thing about this moment we're in as learning professionals is most of that can now be automated if we're brave enough to go for it. That's an exciting moment, I think. And if we do that, then what we get to is a place where you have high engagement, and then we can correlate that engagement with returning users to whatever core business metrics the business cares about. Whether that's retention, whether that's the salespeople selling more, whether that's the engineers doing right first time, whatever it happens to be. What we know is the people that learn frequently more often perform better in their roles. How are we thinking about this? It's good nod still. All right, so maybe finish. Any questions to finish off with before we wrap up? Go for it. Let me do the second one first, because I remember it. So on the translation bit, different engines have different qualities, right? So Google translates okay, but it's not best in class, right? So the way to get translation accurate is to use best in class engines for each bit. And that's why I think there are 3 separate bits to that translation, right? The transcription, because if the transcription is not accurate and the full stop's in the wrong place, the translation's screwed. So that's why we actually have 3 different engines for each of those components and trying to choose best in class for each one. The second one is, the text-to-text translation bit. There are better products, and we use a better one than Google as our default, and only fall back to Google if that language is an edge language that doesn't exist. On the translation bit now, because of the quality of that transcription and translation, the only bit it really gets wrong is customer language, which is why it's really important that the products like ours have the ability to add custom dictionaries in, so that therefore it gets that last 2-3% through towards it. What was the first question? How do you make it not lie? So the not lying bit and the bias bit is really important, right? So the first thing is, in our platform, it only looks at your knowledge. So it's not going out. So as long as your people don't lie, which they probably do, then you're probably good, right? What we then do is we specify which areas get indexed, which areas don't, right? Because you want people to upload, for example, social learning content, but you don't want that to give an accurate answer towards it. So you want to weight that towards, so we use AI to say, let's weight that towards recent popular content from experts in a certain place that the authorities versus someone that's just uploaded a practice video on the same thing. So we thought about it. And I would say, just a little plug, we're the first vendor that's getting the ISO AI certification. It's quite hard to say. AI ISO certification. Yeah. So that which helps. So I think that bit's really important to help people give that IT security bit. So guys, thank you so much for listening. If you want to know more, there's a few stands just over there, or some of our guys behind it. I'd love to answer any more questions or copy the slides, anything you want. Cup of coffee.